Good morning. It is 10 a.m. on October 18, 2022. We'll call to order the meeting of the Story County Board of Supervisors. Please stand with me if you're able and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Hens.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Now it's time for public comment number one. This comment period is for the public to address topics on today's agenda. Anyone wishing to make public comment, you can raise your hand on Zoom or step forward to the table. Seeing no one, will close public comment number one and move to consideration of proclamation recognizing October 2022 as Down Syndrome Awareness Month. Supervisor Merkin, would you like to start?
Whereas each year about 6,000 babies are born with Down syndrome, a 1 in 700 chance. And whereas there are over 250,000 individuals living with Down syndrome in the United States. And whereas while research and early intervention have resulted in dramatic improvements in the lifespan and potential of those who are affected, more investigation is needed into the causes and treatment of Down syndrome.
And whereas possessing a wide range of abilities, people with Down syndrome are active participants in educational, occupational, social, and recreational circles of our communities. And whereas individuals with Down syndrome should have equal opportunity to achieve the universally desired goals of self-fulfillment, pride in their achievements, inclusion in their community, and reach their full potential.
Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Story County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim October 2022 as Down Syndrome Awareness Month and encourage our citizens to work together to promote respect and inclusion of individuals with Down syndrome and to celebrate their accomplishments and contributions. I move the proclamation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Now we have consideration of proclamation recognizing November 7 through 13, 2022 as Operation Greenlight Week in Story County. Supervisor Hedden.
Whereas the residents of Story County have great respect, admiration, and the utmost gratitude for all of the men and women who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas Story County seeks to honor these individuals who have paid a high price for freedom by placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all. And whereas veterans continue to serve our community in the American Legion, Veteran of Foreign Wars, religious groups, civil service, and by functioning as county veteran service officers in 29 states to help former service members access more than $52 billion in federal health, disability, and compensation benefits each year.
And whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually. And whereas an estimated 20% increase of service members will transition to civilian life in the near future. And whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life. And whereas active military service members transitioning from military service are at high risk for suicide during their first year after military service. And
Whereas the National Association of Counties encourages all counties, parishes, and boroughs to recognize Operation Greenlight for veterans. And whereas Story County appreciates the sacrifices of our United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Story County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim November 7th through 13th, 2022 as Operation Greenlight Week in Story County. And with designation as a green light for Veterans County, Story County hereby declares from October 18th through Veterans Day, November 11th, 2022, as a time to salute and honor the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform transitioning from active service. In observation of Operation Greenlight, Story County encourages its citizens in patriotic tradition to recognize the importance of honoring all those who made immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom by displaying a green light in a window of their place of business or residence. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Hens.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Moving on to agency reports. We have AEDC workforce and retraining. Good morning.
Morning,
Just
folks.
turn the microphone on. That would be awesome. And then just know that if you're turning away from the microphone, it will catch your voice. So just turn the microphone to face you so we catch you on the recording. Thank
I don't know how to take that, but thank you.
you. You're first.
I'm first. Good morning.
Good morning.
First off, thank you all three for coming to the 2022 Story County Economic Development Summit last week. Our responses have been overwhelmingly positive. Story County Housing Trust has also notified me they've had several people reach out about offering to serve and help out as well. So thank you all for coming in. I hope it was informational too. So feels like we were just here, but the temperature is definitely colder than it was in July when we did this the last time. Community outreach. So this quarter, myself and Leanne started doing something. We meet every quarter now on the first Friday of every month, just to recap everything going on, update each other on different projects and things she's heard about and what I've heard about, and just keeping each other more in the loop on what's going on. We are finding, coming out of COVID especially, there are very many projects that have been stalled that are starting to, for lack of a better term, launch. So there's a lot of things happening, a lot of things moving that we need to update each other about every month. So every first Friday, we're meeting together on that. Community reports. Gilbert has 2 projects currently, 3 potentially in 2023, relatively quickly going to become public. I've been helping in a couple avenues from federal policy, but also as well on local USDA and everything from RISE grants to economic development on an industrial park to quality of life project. So that is potentially coming as well. Nothing that supervisors are going to have to contribute to, but it's just something to keep on your radar as well. Roland, I have been spending a lot of time in Roland this past month. You 3 were up there for the ARPA presentation that you did. You saw some of that, but in the past month with the city of Roland, we have had economic development goal setting. I had a work session with the city council staff and mayor, and we were able to get a project itinerary going for the past 2 years that's been stalled. So the city of Roland is moving forward with itinerary on replacing the community center, city hall, and also looking at the fire department. Buildings that are outdated are structurally have issues from the derecho, and also as well, we have made contact with the Roland Library Foundation, the property to the north that has been a sticking point for 5 years. And they are willing to come to the table to discuss that. So I've had discussions with them as well. So that is a positive. We have a lot of things happening in Roland. We're targeting the northeast quadrant of the community as urban blight, which will set up a TIF district and also ability to fund a lot of these projects they're going to be looking at. And we are looking at things to not only save taxpayer dollars, but update facilities for decades to come. So this is something that's been, even before COVID was not moving forward, but now we got that going. So that's positive, which is why I've been up there for many, many times in Roland the past quarter. Colo has a housing development that is finally, we got going. They are targeting 30 acres on the south side of Colo along Highway 30. They're going to be looking at retention and a drainage district wraparound, but they are looking at doing that and moving forward. And we are helping the city with developers and housing incentives as well. This is huge. Colo is been wanting to do this for years, and we are finally making a significant progress. And we hope to have an update from the city council 1st of November. So that is something that will be, that's been 7 years in the making.
Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is this the same housing development that county ARPA dollars are going to support, or is this a different development?
Same one, but it's the property finally coming to
Okay.
fruition.
Okay.
So the housing development proposal was always a proposal, and that was the target. But we've been going through numerous trusts, holdings, family, things like that. And we finally have a clear line of sight on that transition. Also as well, we're targeting multi-use. So there's going to be multi-use housing along with single family residence mix. So that way they can serve both retired seniors, families, and kind of make sure it's the entire community and not just one segment. Because they wanted to grow the entire community, not just target one area, because the goal of this is to transition older people, retired residents out of their homes that are too big to homes that might be more feasible and economically better for them. And that opens up their houses to new families. So it's a transition effect.
Are they still looking at those infill lots?
They are still looking at the infill lots. We are targeting those as well. We have a builder that has built in Bondurant, Jefferson, Carroll, and Pella. He is looking at several rural communities in Story County as well. He is a renter, so he builds and rents, and he is long-term. So he is planning on doing this, and these are quality places too. So that is something that we're looking at the infill process too in Colo. Another Colo project that I'll let Nikki update you on that we're working on too is childcare. Also in Zeering, as we all know, had some budget reporting issues earlier this past quarter. Working with the city up there, we were able to fix those budget, work through a lot of things. We are targeting TIF and urban blight up there as well for 2023. Those projects were on hold because of the budget. But with the resolutions that we've been able to find with the budgeting and them getting through this current budget year, urban blight TIF is targeted for 2023. And there's also a Dollar General looking at that area as well. So that is also potential. The building across the street from City Hall that demolished or had a partial collapse before I came on in December last year, that is what we're targeting a brownfield USDA grant on. Caleb at MIPA is looking at avenues on that, and we are looking to target that in 2023 as well. So, and they are on pace to fix everything from what they are calling derecho 3.0 this past year, when they were the only community in Story County that got hit with those street lines. The insurance has come through, everything is proceeding with repairs, but it's also going to stall back all the park improvements that we were targeting for 2022 into 2023. We were looking to applying for some grants and some potential REAP dollars for some park upgrades that they couldn't do because the damage from the derecho had to be fixed first, obviously. Have checkups with McCallsburg, Collins, Maxwell, Cambridge, and Slater. I've reached out to Slater as well after the bond failure on the library, looking at options moving forward. Nothing finalized yet, but as well, it is on the radar and we are having discussions. So there's that. Story County Economic Development Group. I'm going to be working with Leanne coming up here later in October on that agenda. We have worked with McCallsburg on their issues that we talked about at the last meeting for Story County. I have that up there. I'm just waiting for final approval from the city clerk and then agenda for their application for grant funding in 2023. And then 2022 summit update. We had 44 registered people, as you were all three were there. So you saw the proposal as well and the options. Universally, everyone wanted to talk about 3D housing, but honestly, the stories from Ogden and Andrew at Story County Housing Trust and Teresa Greenfield at USDA knocked it out of the park. Everyone was talking about getting connections, and there's been a lot of cross talking already to USDA. I've been told about options and funding. So, updates, target partnership success stories, USDA broadband funding. Reconnect 4 is out. It is really close to closing. We are targeting my conversations with Supervisor Merkin on USDA broadband funding. Filling some of the service areas in that area. USDA, we have been told there is going to be a Reconnect 5 that's going to be launching in January of next year. We are targeting that as a potential funding source for rural broadband. This is a great partnership. It's an option that we can use for wireless or fiber, but the key thing is it provides a lot of flexibility to fill in a lot of gaps in areas that can be used in very, very minimal local matches. Catalyst grant. Finally got the update from Collins on their Catalyst grant from IEDA. That was done in July, August, right around the state fair time. We got that fixed and we got that confirmed. And then I came back to you for that facade grant that you approved for 10,000. Everything is moving forward and they are looking to be done by May of 23. So they are really, really moving hard and fast with this nice weather we've been having. Attended an IEDA workshop in September. That was a catalyst training program, but also 2 new grants that Debbie Durham launched. That was also training for a theater grant and also a placemaking grant. They are supposed to be replicated in 23. So those are potential training things we can talk about. Story County HAP, and then joint nuisance position as well. That is something that I've been talking to the communities about with Amelia on her office position. A lot of interest, a lot of concern, but everyone at this point is saying with everything going on, we would really like to wait and do this over the winter for the spring of 23. That's when everyone starts noticing everything again, and they provide some breathing space. Colo has taken initiative and gone a different route. Colo has gone through a private attorney contract, and they are targeting nuisance directly on a case by case basis. But they're still interested in a partnership. They just had to get moving on some things before their housing initiatives. And then ongoing projects. Roland comprehensive plan. We are revamping from Iowa State. Dollar General discussion is still proceeding. They don't know if they're going to do Dollar General or housing project, but either one is targeted for the east side of E18. Blight designation, I already mentioned downtown housing, childcare. Myself and Nikki have been working with childcare options in Roland. They are moving forward on a different project option than Colo is. It's more long-term because it has to be built from the ground up. They need a structure, and there's just no place in Roland right now that can do it. McCallsburg, working on them and getting signed up for MIPA, paperwork fix, Nuisance County, Gilbert, street infrastructure, sports, Zering, Colo, childcare project that I'm gonna kick to Nikki. Collins, Catalyst Grant, Facade Grant, Theater Grant and trail grants, housing grants. Collins is getting grants. And they are taking up a lot of my time looking through IEDA on the grant side as well. Maxwell, housing renovations, infrastructure, and new housing development. I've connected Andrew with Maxwell. Supervisor Faisal was down there for one of our meetings as well. We are targeting Maxwell for a renovation program in 23. So they are going to be targeting current structures that just need a little attention through Story County Housing Trust. I am on the agenda today to be considered as a new board member for Story County Housing Trust. So I'll be able to be a direct representation as well. And Maxwell is targeting that as their major housing initiative in 2023. Cambridge, the Opera House project is really close to completion. The old gas station, housing goal setting regarding YSS project. The YSS project is only on there because they know that they're going to have increased traffic. They're going to have increased people, maybe workers looking to reside in Cambridge. They just want to start some visioning on how they're going to be handle those workers and that traffic and visitors to the facility that they're
Great
going to be.
idea.
Good forward thinking.
Yeah, and it's really going to be something we're going to be working on in the winter. And it's also going to be something that they hope to partner with YSS as well, saying if you have people looking to work at the facility, Cambridge is an option. We got homes, we have lots, we can build and things like that. So kind of that forward thinking to stay ahead of the game. I'll open up to any questions.
Do you know what's happened with the grocery store in Story City?
I do. There is a targeted piece of property in Story City for a proposed grocery store. It is split into 2 different lots with 2 different owners. So there is a lot that's owned by one owner and another lot that's owned by another owner. One is at the table negotiating. The other one has gone quiet. So Story City is still moving forward with a grocery option. They're just trying to find a location that fits all the check marks they need. So
The old Harlan's location wasn't available?
that was not the primary location they're considering at this
You
time.
want a better one than that.
Yeah.
And I can
So-
understand that. That's kind of out of the way.
It is, and the key thing about this is that these 2 lots they're considering was at one time one owner, and then
Okay.
something happened in the meantime. But there's still interest from the grocery store chain. The community is all in, and we are still working with that community. Dylan in our office, that is at the top of his list.
Yeah.
Between that and everything else, we constantly ask for updates, and he's probably getting sick of us asking about it. So, but it is moving forward just very slowly.
Well, good to hear it's still moving.
Yep.
They really need a grocery store there.
Yep. And it is a top priority for Story City as well. So our office is working, usually about every other week, there's another meeting moving on that. So.
Greg, when I was up at Roland, there was a lot of discussion on the Dollar General, particularly being on the east side.
Mhm.
Is that still kind of the same? Has there been any movement?
My last conversation with their property management company for Dollar General, because they outsource everything. It's what I call the old Walmart model back from the 1980s, where they lease the property. They don't actually own the property. And then they put the building on the property and own the building structure and things like that. So what Dollar General is still considering is only the east side. However, we don't know yet what type of model they're looking at. They are looking at Dollar General started flipping their model too because of the recent COVID and also inflation. It used to be 80-20 split, 80% retail, 20% grocery, canned goods, things like that. They are starting a new market fresh option is what they're calling it. And they are updating over 2,000 stores nationwide into this model where they're flipping 80% grocery, 20% retail. And they're also expanding models as well from their usual 8 to 10,000 square foot to 12,000 square foot. We don't know those details yet. We just know they have an interest in the property, and then there's still discussions going with the private business, private property owner. There's still zoning things that we need to resolve. There's still the fact being that the private ownership of the property is still there. Dollar General doesn't even own the property yet. And I have been told there's a housing developer looking at the property. The key thing that I've been telling the city mayor and council and staff is that myself and Chip from Northland Securities, who's their financial advisor, we've been working on 2 plans. One has a commercial development in that property for their financing needs. The other one has housing. So if either plan moves forward, we have a plan in place for the community to show them how to move forward with their financing on the project list. So there's no delay in anything else.
That's awesome.
It's just the fact being the property owner has to make a decision. And then when they make a decision, we're primed and ready to go.
Great. Thank you.
2023, new outreach events. We are planning new outreach events to our smaller communities in Story County. 4 trips, 1 every quarter in 2023, to like Cambridge in the Opera House, to Zeering in the USDA program, to Roland in their urban blight downtown housing project. These type of things that we're highlighting in rural areas. So we can show them what's going on for these partnerships, because every partnership that I mentioned in that list is going to require a federal, a state, a local, my work through your contract with Ames Chamber. All that stuff is partnerships. So we're going to start doing that. And we're going to start inviting local legislators as well to showcase what their projects are doing to get buy-in and show what's going on at the local level. So that's what we're proposing for 2023. Iowa Rural Summits back in Ames, been talking to Bill Menner. We've been trying to meet, but our schedules are not matching up. But we are talking Rural Summit at the Gateway again in 2023. But something we've been talking about as well is maybe a highlight on Story County. Story County's contract with the Ames Chamber is unique anywhere in the state. In fact, Johnston County, like we discussed earlier this year, just copied it because they needed help for their rural communities as well. So maybe we get a panel up there of Story County focus, showing them what our work through Story County and the Ames MSA is doing for not just Story County, but Boone County as well. So kind of showing what the regional partnerships are pulling together. So that's something me and Bill are talking, just to put it on your radar. And then already receiving ideas for 2023 economic development. I've had transportation, I've had childcare, I had someone mention workforce, which I immediately kicked to Nikki because I didn't want that on my list. That just shows the positive reaction from our summit this year, but also people are excited for next year. So there's that. And that is the end of my list. Which is extensive, I know, but any further questions, anything? Otherwise, I will pass it to Nikki.
Have you been doing anything this past 3 months?
I
Sits in his office.
the last thing I remember was it was the 4th of July and now there's pumpkin spice everywhere. That is, quarters are flying by. Yes.
There's just an incredible amount of projects going on in various stages around Story County, and it's so good to see. And thank you so much for helping people move those along.
There is, thank you. I will point out that there's so much partnerships out there in the rural areas. I mean, there's councils, there's mayors, there's county staff, there's you up here. We are getting so much buy-in at the local level to tap these federal dollars coming down. Everyone's excited and everyone's working together, which is even Roland, which you 3 saw with the discussion on Dollar General. It was civil. I mean, people were excited that there was this kind of growth. It was just what type of growth does the community want? So the fact that we are having this right now is speaking volumes of Story County.
I appreciate all that you've done, Greg, in going out. I do think your background as a former city council person really helps these smaller communities, gives you that credibility when you work with them and what they're able to do and potential dollars that they're able to pull down. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I always enjoy when we sit down and talk and hear of either you presenting here or you and I having coffee and talking, all the new things that are going on.
Yes, because
It does take a partnership.
it does, and there's always stories, whether it's urban poultry or transportation needs, every community in Story County has got a story right now. So it's very good to have that conversations going on.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to hear the outreach that you're planning. And because I think aside from the work, there's nothing more important than telling the stories and continuing to share what's happening, what's working, what isn't working. Because one thing that is a huge challenge right now, especially, is just getting information out to people. So the more we can tell the stories that are happening and the work that's happening here, the better. And so I appreciate you using your microphone in that way and really helping share all of the information.
Thank you. I am loving this job, and yes, I spend a lot of days in my office, but I do come out every once in a while and to tell these stories. So it's very, very enjoyable work.
I don't see you in your office that much. I see you in Roland, I see you in Gilbert, or I hear, oh, Greg was just here when I stopped at Gilbert the other day, and, I know. I know.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
Well, good morning, supervisors.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we have the retraining initiative. Wow, I'm really loud. So it is definitely not as many students that we have had. I don't know if over the summer people just kind of were not wanting to do school. It was definitely a struggle, but we do have some different ones. So we've got a phlebotomy student. Obviously, we always have CNA students. The help desk IT, they're actually taking that out in West Des Moines. And it's the first time that DMAC has done a class like that, where they've kind of taken their IT class and actually made it into a certificate course, because this is usually a 2-year degree. So we're really excited that one of our students is able to do that, and then hopefully, maybe bring that to Ames, because it's something that we've talked about anyways, with the IT, just with all the different jobs within that space. So really excited about that. And then we do have an industrial electrical maintenance. The individual is actually from Ogden, works in Ogden, but lives here. So they will be graduating fourth quarter. All of the students will be. They started this last quarter and will be graduating the following quarter. And we have the meet and greet set up for December 15th. So that'll be exciting for them. And I think it'll be, I was really surprised that the employers were willing to come, because it's 3 different kinds of students, but they were all really excited to have, someone from IT, a CNA, and phlebotomy. So we did have 3 students drop due to health concerns. And they, all kinds of different situations. We do still have them on the list, so hoping to get them back in the spring. So the average age of our students was 31, which I kind of like to see that higher number for those people that are really just wanting to change their career. It's one of the things that I really enjoy about the retraining initiative. All the students were Ames residents, and I know that we had some questions in regards to that. We were seeing a lot more of diverse throughout Story County, but this quarter we did not see that. We do still, try to market out to those when I'm going to Colo to talk about childcare. I always bring up the retraining as well. Going to the libraries. We do have new marketing personnel in the office, so I'm really hoping that they can kind of help with getting some different initiatives and different ideas on how we get that out.
Maybe to churches? Have you been sending the information to churches also?
No, I have not tried churches as well.
That would be good.
yeah, but I mean, I usually go around and just kind of do like the libraries and then, you know, if there's like a Casey's or something, maybe I'll stick one in there. Just because in the rural, there's usually a Casey's, you know, so I kind of try to use those avenues as
How
well.
about food at first?
I have
in Nevada?
sent stuff out to a lot of our food banks, but it's definitely not like I haven't consistently done it. But it is something that I have done before. I actually use the Nevada's Barb's. I cannot think of what it's called, but the food pantry here in Nevada.
Intuitive first.
It is the food first. Okay.
That's
Um,
the meals.
yes.
Those are-
and she's put it in, you know, over 200 to 300.
Or amendment.
Yep.
Yes.
And we tried to, you know, also hold an informational session for the individuals that are receiving the food and things like that. So yeah, so still definitely reaching out. Also, another thing that we did kind of over spring break last year is a lot more people come into Ames and go to the movie theaters because they're off that week and maybe families in town and things like that. So really looking at the holiday break when the students are off in December and kind of, you know, putting in advertisement in the movie theaters again to kind of see if that can help us as well.
That's a good idea.
Because there's definitely interest, you know, I've said this, I think every time. So CNA, there's always interest. We're always, I mean, the list is always 40 people deep trying to get classes going as much as possible. It's just, you know, the other ones as well. And, you know, what's needed, what people, you know, who actually knows about it, and how they access it. So still working on that. So we've also had, you know, 7 of the students report to me on, you know, receiving that 30th day. You know, they've taken a job within Story County. They're there for at least 30 days and they're getting that last stipend. So that's probably the highest that we've seen. So that's always good to hear. We are still looking to do a welding class. We're just honestly looking for an instructor. Is the last piece of that. I think we've got a class of like 7 or 8. And we're just looking for that last piece of an instructor. So. Yeah, go to the next one. Thank you. So see yourself at Ames. So we do have our last one coming up tomorrow. Yeah. So this is always nice. So the average attendance of these interns has been about 90 interns. We've had some that were, you know, really big and, you know, a few that were, you know, about 89, 85. But the last one is personal branding with Lawrence Cunningham, who's also the head of AEDC. So it'll be great to hear him speak. And then also in July, we had Kyvan Gadsden. So that was a lot of fun to hear him talk and, you know, for the students to actually be able to, you know, talk to him, ask him questions, things like that. So that was a lot of fun. It's a great program. I think, you know, we get great feedback from the interns, you know, or young professionals as well on these events. So excited to do it again in 2023. So next slide. So workforce. So our unemployment numbers are still down. You know, as of last year, we were at 3.3%. We're still at 2.4%. We're one of the lowest counties. It's not about people not working. It's just, you know, bringing in more people. So that's one of the things that we try to do. So with trying to reach out and do a little bit more, I did attend the Drake Career Fair. It was their business and technology career fair. It was honestly really great to see just a different group of kids, and they asked tons of questions. They always usually want to know what I do, and you're not going to do what I do, but I have all kinds of other things that you can do. And what was great about that is Drake also sent out an electronic resume booklet. So we sent that off to the employers as well. So that was a nice ad. And then we also held the career fair at the Iowa State Research Park this summer. And then we do have 2 career fairs going on this fall. I've got one this Saturday with Story County. Here, we're going to actually hold it at the Boys and Girls Club. So it's, you know, a different space, but we're still on a bus route, and we've got some great employers. I've also just to kind of entice people, I guess. We are doing some door prizes. So we have 2 Iowa State football tickets for the following weekend for the Oklahoma game. And we've got Sweet Carolines gave us some gift cards. Ag Certain, or I should say Maytag, is going to give us like a little blue cheese gift basket. So our members are kind of just giving us a few things. A lot of people were saying that I was holding the career fairs at times that they were working, so they were able to make it. And when looking at the unemployment numbers, you see that, people really do have jobs, but maybe they want something different. So hopefully holding it on a Saturday really allows them to be able to attend. So I'm excited to see what this does and how it, will affect the career fairs. So, and then the one we're also doing in Boone, and I always mark it, to our Story County as well. But the first one is an open house. And so we're going to go out to the armory and look around, have the military show us, what their soldiers do. We've got these great men and women who are there, putting in a ton of time, and they still have, they were telling me that, one of them is a CPA, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy to me, so that'll be nice. And then there's also a chance to ride in a Blackhawk. So that'll be exciting for the employers. And then I think we're looking at the beginning of December, we're going to hold the career fair. And it will be a joint drill weekend where they have about 300 to 400 soldiers come, along with their spouses, especially for the December. So we're really hoping to do that, and be able to show off all of our employers and hopefully, our area, as well as maybe if they don't live here, they can move. I also attended the Future Ready Iowa Summit. That was a great place to just kind of learn more about the work-based learning, how to bring that into the classrooms. I've got quite a few different things going with the schools. We're calling it just a Future Ready Night. We've got Roland Story coming up November 22nd. We've got Collins Maxwell was the other one, is November 3rd. And then we've got Ballard and Colonesco that we're finding dates for them. And these nights are specifically for colleges, trades, FAFSA questions, maybe even just bringing in, and every school's kind of doing it a little different. But even bringing in the counselors and just giving the students and parents time to talk to them about what their students' plan is, what they want it to look like, how do they get, write resumes, or how do they write for a grant to get to college. So that's something new that we're doing this year. So I'm really excited that a lot of schools have really jumped on board with that. And so I partner with SCAN to kind of help organize that and kind of pull our resources. So really excited about that. Also, the childcare efforts. So in Roland, they have applied for the Iowa Women's Foundation grant. They did make it to the second round. They were filling that out.
They did or did not?
They did.
Okay.
Yep. And so they were filling that out, and they should hopefully hear by, I do believe it's the second week of November, if they receive that. And then in receiving that, then they can start moving forward with more plans to kind of help with, getting their childcare going forward and plans and things like that. They did the really made it, filed the paperwork with the state of Iowa. They've been doing some fundraisings this summer at the farmers markets to kind of help with, raising money for that nonprofit. And then we've also been in constant discussions with the city on, how the city partners with them and things like that. So that one definitely is going to be a little bit more planning and, kind of figuring out how we do that. But they have citizens that are really wanting it and pushing it forward. So it's not a business that's doing it. It's citizens that are doing it. And then Colonesco School District, We had our first meeting as a task force, and there was school board members, teachers, parents. The superintendent has been huge in this, and then Greg and we met. And we are hoping to, or we're going to get in an application for the governor's childcare slot grant that is due in November. We've got everything in place. We've started talking to businesses. We've started writing down our plan. They have space in the school. And they have the playground, and, there's just a few things that they would have to update, add, those kinds of things, which funding would need to help. They did have at one point a partnership that they were trying to work with YSS. And we even talked about, if we can at least get this part started, maybe bringing YSS back in to kind of help run that childcare space. Because YSS kind of had, issues with just, getting the workers and, trying to help them because it was a new thing. So that's moving forward. I've got CCR&R coming out to look at the space with me, just so we can make sure that all of the DHS regulations and things like that are in place. Which I, assume a lot of them already are in place because it's a school and they passed their inspection for their construction. So, but it's always good to do all of the homework. So we are doing that. And then we have another meeting next week that we will actually be really starting to kind of write that grant, looking at the questions, pulling the business partners and things like that. So that one's exciting. And we are actually hoping to have that up and running fall of 23. And then the workforce analytics. So this is, what you're seeing on Facebook, Twitter, website. We get great feedback from the things that we share on social media. The numbers are always great. We did hear, so there was Lake Mills up north, had some layoffs with some manufacturing. Also in Waterloo, there was some layoffs with some manufacturing. So we actually did target those areas as well. With like our career fairs and, just the things that we have going on here. We also have a lot of advertising from our employers on jobs that have come up. And so those job postings and things like that, we've kind of helped. We also we just talked to the Iowa State University Daily, the newspaper, and their social media platform as well. And we are going to partner with them as well and get on their social media and newsletter. We will be able to highlight our employers here in those and kind of reach not only the students, but also the alumni. So, we'll be more nationwide, really be able to promote that work in Ames.com so that our employers that are using that platform are really able to get seen. So that'll be coming in January of 23. Next slide. So future, so I talked a little bit about that Story County Career Fair already, Boone as well. And then also I talked about the ISU Daily Market. So we do have some we've got 3 different events that I'm working on. One, I'm working with Latifa and another one of our partners to really get women in leadership. And what we're hoping that to look like is have 3 or 4 big events throughout the year, kind of not all at the same time, just kind of spread out, maybe once a quarter or something like that. But then also really have a chance to have some small group discussions that happen in between those big events. And really be able to show growth in leadership with the women who attended.
And opportunities for mentorship.
Yeah, we'll see what it grows into, but it's really exciting. We've got a lot of really great women in the community that, we'll all be able to build each other up. So really excited about that one. I'm also working with Iowa State University on trying to figure out how we do our own certificates. So you would actually go to your own classes. There would be about 6 different sessions. You would, kind of learn a little bit more about the language, how to use it in the workplace, how to use it at home, those kinds of things. Then really kind of step away and take that out into the real world with you, then come back in the last few sessions would be, what is your strategy? Whether it's a 1-year or 3-year plan strategy, and just, did you have a situation come up and how did you handle it? And, what does that look like for you or your company? So that is in the works. I don't have any dates on that yet, but definitely utilizing some of the professors and also the DEI office at Iowa State. So talking to them about that. And then also a minority business and entrepreneurs event. So we do partner with Iowa State Research Park and have that Smart Start, which is great. What I'd really like to do is just kind of gear maybe only just like a half a day that kind of gets those, minority business owners, maybe a keynote or something like that to really get them, what are they struggling with? What are conversations that they need to have? And then as that event ends, then they can roll into a Smart Start where they can learn about more in depth on insurance or, loans or things like that. But I'd really like to hold an event. We have the minority book that we do that I update at the beginning of every year. And we do have, quite a few, and it's self-reported. So, I definitely don't have all of them. But we do have quite the community of minority-owned businesses. And so I definitely want to kind of have a space for them to kind of learn and grow as well, and maybe even network. And then also be able to go out to the research park and just network with everybody. So I think that is it. Yes. Perfect. Questions?
Oh, thanks for Thanks for all that you're doing.
I'm also excited about the middle school job fair.
Oh, yes. I
That-
think I had it on there and then I totally skipped over.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was not, you weren't talking about anything at all. Oh, my God. Yeah, but I think
Yes,
that's going to be.
the Story County Middle School Career Fair is at the library next Monday, 5 to 7. And so all the Story County middle school students are able to come, and we've got quite a list of employers that they can come talk to. And then we've got 3 employers who are actually going to have 30 minutes of hands-on time for them to really learn about a specific career. So it's exciting. So
I've seen flyers around the county. You did a
Good.
really good job of getting them out.
Yep.
good.
Good thing.
Yes. Awesome.
Well, thank you both. Any other questions?
Nope.
You're not very busy either, are you?
No, I sit in my office next to his office.
Oh, okay.
What I think is happening is that we're both out of the office at different times, so we never see each other as we're crossing through the.
No, I think you
Like
both are
uniform.
very busy. It's obvious from what you're doing that you're out and about in the county. You don't just work from your offices, and have a lot of things going on in our smaller communities. And I want to thank you very much.
Yes. you're
Thank you.
welcome. Well, thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity to be able to do it for you.
Thank you both. Okay, next we have consideration of minutes from October 11.
I move approval of the October 11th, 2022 minutes as presented.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
I
Basil. Aye. Moving to consent agenda.
move approval of consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Merkin.
I
Hens.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. So now we've got public hearing items. First consideration of ordinance 306, amending chapter 85, general provisions and definitions, and chapter 86, district requirements of Story County Code of Ordinances. Good morning.
Good morning.
Amelia.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you guys. Okay. So this is an ordinance establishing setbacks for hazardous materials pipelines. And that can include hazardous gases or hazardous liquids. We have a Story County Pipeline Working Group, and part of that working group's direction was for planning staff to work with our emergency management staff and come up with an ordinance for all types of hazardous materials pipelines. And so that is what is before you today. Could you go back one? Sorry. The ordinance is pretty limited. I know it's a lot, but it's limited to setbacks. And we did this on purpose. Counties can, through zoning, regulate uses and setbacks. And we really wanted to make sure that this was narrowly tailored. So what we're not doing is giving the county the ability to deny the actual hazardous materials pipeline. It's a principal permitted use that is up to the Iowa Utility Board. We are just regulating setbacks from residential uses and other use that may be hard to evacuate or present unique risks. The ordinance is we used for gas pipelines, hazardous gas pipelines, so think natural gas, a formula from federal law where it helps when you're doing emergency planning, determine an impact radius from a blast if there was an explosion. So that was, a readily available formula. Other counties in Illinois, we've seen it in their ordinances. It made sense. For liquid pipelines, hazardous liquid pipelines, there is a setback in federal law. However, PHMSA, the Hazardous Pipeline Materials Safety Agency that regulates pipelines, recently came out and said they are working on new regulations for carbon dioxide pipelines, and those are not available yet. So staff went out and looked at scientific articles and tried to find, based on models in those peer-reviewed articles, a most appropriate setback formula that we could use based on pipeline diameter. So there's a sliding scale because the risk of carbon dioxide leaking, it increases with the volume of carbon dioxide, and that's based on both pressure and size. And so we needed a sliding scale based on size. And so we took an article that we felt was most similar to what we might see in Story County and created a formula based on that article's findings. I think we also developed two different setbacks. So for both types of hazardous materials, pipelines, gas and liquid, we have a setback just from single family dwellings. And we also have a greater setback from nursing homes, hospitals, areas where the public might gather in denser configurations and outdoor spaces or indoor spaces, churches, parks, that kind of. Okay. The first thing I wanted to point out about this ordinance is that it is just for pipelines that are transporting these materials through the county. We are not regulating distribution lines of natural gas to anyone's home. We are not allowed to regulate that under state code. We're not regulating rural water lines, electric transmission lines, just hazardous materials pipelines that pose, health and safety risks. We do have new definitions. One thing I wanted to point out here is that I appreciate Ethan, the county attorney's review of the ordinance, and he pointed out we needed to add a definition. So this is not in the ordinance that was posted on the agenda. We've included it on this presentation, and if you choose to approve on first consideration, it will be as presented. So we'll bring back the ordinance for the second consideration with this definition. And it is for professionally accepted level of concern. I'll get into what this means a little bit more on the next few slides, but basically, while we have these formulas for setbacks based on pipeline pressure and size, we do also create an allowance if a company were to submit their own modeling as well as an emergency response plan based on professionally accepted levels of concern thresholds for a given hazardous material. We would allow them to reduce the setback. Okay, and then this is just showing again, hazardous materials pipelines are now a principal permitted use in our A1, A2, commercial and heavy industrial districts, not in residential zoning districts, but in most of our other zoning districts. So what that means is they'll need to come they're allowed use, but they need to come in and get a permit application with our department, and we'll review it to meet certain standards. And those standards include setbacks. So the setbacks, again, for gas, we have from residential developments and places of public assembly. It is again a formula where you determine the radius of the setback based on a factor multiplied by the square root of the pressure of the pipeline multiplied by the square of the diameter. And then we also use this same formula for dwellings. However, it does not apply unless it is a very large pipeline that would create an impact radius over 660 feet. So that is from federal code too. So while we have a setback from dwellings, it's really only in the instance where there's a really large pipeline going through that, if there was an issue, could create an impact over 660 feet. And that's following federal guidelines. I did want to point out that, so for gas, for instance, we did include an example here. So a 24-inch 1,200 natural gas pipeline would have a setback of around 574 feet. That's a pretty large natural gas pipeline. For liquid pipelines, so these are non-carbon dioxide liquid pipelines. We adopted federal standards. So that's 50 feet. And we included that in the table that this is following federal standards, but it's 50 feet. And then for carbon dioxide pipelines, this is the formula that staff developed. So from residential developments, so, subdivisions with 4 lots or more, or quarter sections with 4 dwellings or more, churches, other places of public assembly. The diameter, we similarly calculate a radius based on the diameter of the pipeline. For a 6-inch pipeline, which I think is what is going to be coming through Story County, this would equate to a setback of around 1,600 feet. From dwellings, we use a lesser formula. Again, this is based on health and safety concentration levels to ensure that there's adequate evacuation time. A 6-inch pipeline just from a would have a setback of 974 feet. So we have a higher threshold for setbacks from more at-risk uses, harder to evacuate uses. We have also built in, I guess that was a lot. You have questions so far about the formulas or anything before I get into the emergency plan?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So while we've established, again, we've introduced a process where if you go above and beyond and submit your own modeling and work with the county and our first responders to create an emergency plan, we can reduce the setback because the emergency plan help us mitigate that risk. We worked with emergency management on the contents of that emergency plan. They need to outline the types of events, what the impact could be, who should we contact, who will they contact in an event of emergency. We also should identify the unique hazards or risks that our emergency responders might encounter. Is there a risk of asphyxiation or is there a risk of explosion from that material? Do our first responders need specialized equipment? It is recommended that the company provide that equipment if it is needed. And then what training will they be providing to ensure our emergency responders are equipped to respond? Again, we are requiring modeling. They have to submit their own modeling. of the impact area based on their pipeline size, and the risk it presents. They also need to provide a list of dwellings and places of public assembly within 1 mile and notify those places when they submit their permit application about what the risks are and any actions they should take in the event of a rupture.
Question,
Yes,
is topography to be included in that?
in
Okay,
the model, topography, prevailing weather conditions.
Good,
Yes.
thank you.
Mhm. And we do require that the levels of concern, so the levels they use to determine what a health and safety risk is, are from some sort of professionally accepted source. So for instance, OSHA and NIOSH put out parts per million levels for when you might see a health impact if there was a rupture, and we want them to use those sources in their modeling to see the distance at which those levels may be found. We did make one change to the evacuation section. Initially, we had recommended an annual notification to all dwellings and places of public assembly within 1 mile. However, that is not enforceable because if they didn't do it, I don't know what repercussions, what actions the county would be able to take. So Ethan did recommend just making that a recommendation that there's annual notification. A lot of gas companies are already doing that. But we just can't require it for the first time when they submit their
So, yeah,
permit.
natural gas pipelines have to do an annual.
Yes, and that's under federal law, though. And then we also ask that they consult with cities if they're going through any urban growth areas. So I think we saw that with a pipeline recently worked with Story City to look at their future growth plans and reroute the pipeline. And I think that was a really good outcome, and we should encourage that kind of cooperation. We also are establishing our own minimum cover requirements for pipelines. There are minimum requirements for some types of pipelines under federal law. However, for liquid pipelines in agricultural areas, it was not well defined. And so we felt we needed a minimum cover of at least 48 inches, especially because that not only matches our drainage crossings requirements that'll be on your agenda here in a minute, but it also, Iowa, the state, requires 18 inches of deep tilling over the pipeline route after it's installed to restore agricultural land. And if you have a pipeline closer to the surface, I just want to make sure there isn't a conflict there. And we also, our Planning and Zoning Commission did also discuss this requirement at length. We have a farmer on our commission who provided some really good insights on this would be below the freeze thaw level, things move. There have been several instances where farmers have hit pipelines in Story County in the past. And then we're also going to require a setback from critical natural resources areas. And if new development is proposed within the setback of a pipeline, we ask that that new development go and consult with the pipeline company and better understand the risks before they move forward. So it's not a reverse setback where no one can then build a home in that area or a new subdivision, or a city can't develop in that area. We just ask they consult with the pipeline company first. That's it on the emergency plan and other standards.
If a company submits an emergency plan themselves, what's the requirement for the training? The training that's required to work with our local emergency
Yes.
responders, are they still required to ensure that our local responders have the same training if they're providing their own team of responders?
They're required to address either in the plan if they're going to be training our responders or if they'll have a team. Melissa, do you have any comments on that? Melissa's helping me out with that section.
Our goal with that was just to ensure that they are providing some type of training to local first responders, whether they have an in-house team that's going to respond or not, because there still is a responsibility for the local fire agency to respond to any type of incident that would occur along that pipeline. Don't think we specifically defined it will be these trainings. It will be acceptable industry standard training. They would have to show proof that they're doing that training. They've done that training with the first responders. Because irregardless, I mean, if something stays contained, and this is a little bit different because we have a pipeline that's traversing the county. Likely, if there's any type of incident, the fire department's going anyway. They're going to be securing that area until the company's team can arrive. Because the teams aren't, their response and repair teams are usually not housed locally. And that even happens with our natural gas providers as well. So the fire departments with their hazardous materials operations level certification, secure the area, consider the evacuate if there needs to be evacuations done, and then would coordinate and work with that repair team or whatever response team the company is going to provide, which I don't know what that's going to be yet. I've not had a lot of communication from either pipeline provider to know what that's going to entail. But they're going to need to show some proof that they are conducting training with local first responders to ensure they understand the risks and the hazards that come along with whatever hazardous liquid pipeline would be traversing the county.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I know one of the presentations we had at one point, one of the companies was planning to provide their own response team and have their own plan. My only concern was that our local responders have the training and the support that they need because they are going to be the first ones
Right.
on the
Exactly.
scene. And we want to make sure that whatever it is that we're developing is closing any
Mhm.
gaps.
Yeah, because, even if they do have their own response team that's coming, there is going to be that period of time
Right.
where first responders are going to be the first ones there.
Right.
And making sure that everybody understands the roles and responsibilities of each department, and what they're required to do when there's a type of hazardous materials release, I think is something important to ensure that if these companies want to be good stewards and want to ensure that they're conducting that emergency planning effort, we felt was important to build that in there.
That's why I really like the way you've crafted this, because you give them some incentive to do that plan. And training is only the first step. It's the plan, as we know from all the emergency response things that we've done in the last few years. It's that plan that's really important. So
Yeah.
everybody knows their role.
So yeah, just to summarize, the ordinance does require that roles and responsibilities are delineated and then our local emergency responders receive training and information on risk.
Yeah, and I think that's good because I recall that presentation as well. And I think they were saying that, their response team could be 10 minutes away, but they could be 30 or 40 minutes away. Well, what may occur in that 30 or 40 minutes?
Right. Great. Thanks, Melissa.
Amelia, I do have one question for you.
Yes.
Whenever PHMSA comes up with their standards, which might be years, I don't know if you have any idea.
I don't, but we could reassess at
We would
that.
reassess them. That's exactly what I was thinking, because you've done a really good job of using the federal standards and standards that are already there that are applicable. And I really commend you on actually doing research when there weren't any and going further. So maybe PHMSA will just come and copy Story County.
We will see.
Let us know. But if they don't, we'll look at what they do.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
So we do have 2 points of analysis that you have to make with all amendments to the code. One is if it conforms with the intent of the ordinance, and one is if it conforms with the intent of our C2C plan. The C2C plan has an actual strategy that we need to adopt setbacks from hazardous materials pipelines. So very in line with the C2C plan. And then our ordinance, again, is just based on protecting public health, safety, and welfare. And we're clearly doing that with this ordinance too. So we did publish legal notice, and then we went to Planning and Zoning Commission. They unanimously supported it. And then, of course, the county attorney reviewed it, Assistant County Attorney Ethan Anderson. And we went over the changes that he recommended that will be brought back for second consideration. So alternative one is approval on first as presented, setting second consideration for next Tuesday.
Any questions?
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay. This is public hearing, so we will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to make public comment, you can raise your hand on Zoom or in the audience, you can step forward to the table. Going to give it just a second for the folks on Zoom. Okay, seeing no one raise their hand to make public comment, we will close public hearing. Any other questions, further discussion?
I'll make the motion. I move approval of ordinance number 306 on first consideration as presented, amending chapter 85, general provisions and definitions, and chapter 86, district requirements of the Story County Code of Ordinance, land development regulations to establish setback requirements for hazardous material pipelines, and to set the second reading for next Tuesday, which would be October 28th. Is that right? 25th, as
As presented.
presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hens,
Aye.
Merkin,
Aye.
Basil, aye. Thank
Thanks.
you. We have another public hearing item, first consideration of ordinance 307, amending chapter 90 conditional uses of Story County Land Development Regulations of the Story County Code of Ordinances to amend the provision for adaptive reuse.
Morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so we received an application from a citizen to amend the code of chapter 90 of the land development regulations. We have a table, chapter 90, it goes over conditional uses. Talk briefly about what that means. I know you're not quite as familiar as, you know, our Board of Adjustment and our Planning Commission on the conditional uses. But it is, you know, things like churches, wind farms, human services facilities, things that aren't ordinarily, you know, principally permitted, you know, in A1 district, R1 district, that kind of thing. We have a table that goes over what types of conditional use permits someone can apply for. And some of those conditional uses have supplemental standards. In that table, table 90-1, it does talk about adaptive reuse of schools, other institutional buildings, other commercial facilities that have been abandoned, maybe, you know, in the A1 district. And it allows those existing structures to perhaps have a commercial use that might not typically be allowed in the A1 district, for instance. So this came about because we had interest from an individual in converting an existing barn into an event venue off of Highway 210 and I-35. It is zoned A1. At this moment, the only way to operate an event venue in the A1 district is to concurrently operate a bed and breakfast, which this individual was not interested in doing. But they did relay during conceptual review that they wanted to have a museum in the basement of this existing barn. It was built in 1875. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. So we suggested that, you know, they could apply for a text amendment to revise that adaptive reuse provision in chapter 90 so that it expressly allows reuse of things like barns, which is what he did. He applied for that text amendment, which is how we are here now. So I've kind of already talked about that. And so his proposed language was pretty narrow, and that should be up on the screen. So it was just changing, you know, one thing, adding in barns of historical significance to that provision. Staff modified it somewhat to make it a little bit more, restrictive, right? Barns of historical significance, you know, that leaves a lot of gray area for interpretation. So we modified that to make it clearer that it's not just barns, it's not just ag structures, but you know, other buildings, other structures listed on the National Register of Historic Places, or those designated as local landmarks that contribute to a historic district. Go ahead.
Who designates local landmarks?
That's a good question. That is a future work program item for Planning and Development Department to look at those historic districts and designating local landmarks. So this, the modification to the text amendment by staff was more forward thinking of what might come about later. with the ordinance and having historic districts in the unincorporated parts of the county. So, yeah. So that's our modification of the proposed language. We feel that restricting it to structures on that national register might prevent using adaptive reuse as a loophole. For having too many commercial uses in the A1 district, having nuisance issues crop up. There are supplemental standards, like I mentioned, in the conditional uses chapter for, wind farms, for instance, they have supplemental standards. And we're just suggesting one, that if an individual is applying for an adaptive reuse conditional use permit under this provision, that the structures on the National Register of Historic Places, that they cannot destroy or obscure essential architectural features, and that those must be enhanced to the extent that it is feasible to do so. So we are also suggesting that one supplemental standard, again, very narrowly tailored for the adaptive reuse provision. So as Amelia just talked about in her proposed text amendment, we do have 2 points of analysis here so that it conforms to the C2C plan, and it also conforms to the scope and purpose of the ordinance. In the C2C plan in chapter 3, it does actually have a strategy that calls for encouraging maintenance and adaptive reuse of historic areas and buildings, including barns and silos. So this just expressly, puts forward that strategy that's in the C2C plan and makes that happen through the ordinance. Additionally, we feel it conforms to the scope and purpose of the ordinance. We have other chapters that govern use of land, use of structures. This is really doing the same thing, governing use of structures in specific zoning districts. And we did look, as part of our research into this, how many barns, how many structures in the unincorporated parts of the county are on that National Register of Historic Places. There are 12 barns, 1 church, and 1 dwelling. So this is not creating like a free-for-all where every barn, in the county, every old barn could apply for this adaptive reuse provision. Individuals whose barns or ag structures are not on that list could, of course, petition to get on the National Register, and then they would, be allowed under this provision to have an adaptive reuse permit.
Excuse me, you said 12 barns, 1 church, and what was the other one?
1 dwelling.
Dwelling.
Just, I think it's near Iowa Center.
Iowa Center?
Yeah,
Okay,
just
that
north
would
of
make sense.
Maxwell.
Okay.
So we did publish legal notifications in the county newspapers. No comments were received. We did have a planning and zoning commission meeting on this item on October 5th. Again, no members of the public attended. The applicant attended and talked more about, kind of what they had in mind when they proposed this, but we haven't had any public comments. And the planning and zoning commission did unanimously vote to recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors of Ordinance 307. So in bold up there is what we are recommending. Alternative 1, that the Story County Board of Supervisors approves Ordinance 307 as presented on first consideration and set second consideration for next Tuesday, October 25th.
Andrea, I just have one question.
Sure.
Kind of goes along with what Supervisor Merkin was asking in regarding to designating local landmarks. And you said you're going to have a work group looking at that? Or
It's a possible work program item for next year. Yep, for the Planning and Development Department to put together an ordinance on that. Yeah.
Because if you do that, you're going to broaden it somewhat. You're going past the National Register.
Right.
but-
It would be a little bit.
But
broader.
I can
Mhm.
think of structures I've seen come down in the past year, particularly a couple of really nice old silos, and I think if there's any way to encourage people to reuse some of those structures and not tear them down, because we're losing some of our architectural history really
Mhm.
quickly. So I'm all for that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I was just seeking clarification from what you
Sure.
said. Just want to make sure there wasn't any confusion since it's a forward work group that you're going to be
Right.
working on, and you're not all of a sudden going to have folks coming to you saying, hey, I'd like to do this, but you haven't even worked on that yet. So, yeah.
We can't do that yet, but
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a good intention.
Right.
I don't have any questions.
So will this allow the applicant to move forward with an event venue? Or is there
Correct.
more
Yeah.
that they'll have to do to have?
So if this ordinance were adopted to amend the text of chapter 90, they could then apply for a conditional use permit for an adaptive reuse of their barn.
Okay.
And that would allow them to say, I'd like to use this as an event venue. They'd have to meet all our standards for approval for conditional uses. So it is a full application process. It would have to go to planning and zoning and the Board of Adjustment to vote on it and approve or deny it. So there would be steps to take,
Mhm.
but this would open his ability to make that conditional use permit application. Otherwise,
And I know that's that person's responsibility, but we put something in as a condition that you abide by all the requirements of the National Historic Registry.
yes, we could do that.
I
Mhm.
think that might be good, just so it's clear that, people don't think, oh, well, now the county's given me permission, I can go do whatever I want to with this
Mhm.
property. That's not necessarily the case. Okay. Amelia.
So the National Register is honorific. There aren't actual requirements if you change a structure on the National Register. It's just if you're applying for grant funding to do. so.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So the local historic district ordinance would be key in that as well, and establishing standards and a review process if we are changing features without federal grant money involved.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that's why we have that supplemental standard that you really shouldn't be changing defining features. We need that.
Okay, so that's going to be what guides it,
Yes.
not anything from the, okay.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Um,
All right, any other questions? No? Okay, we will open public hearing. Anyone wishing to make public comment, you can raise your hand on Zoom or step forward to the table. And just give it a minute for anyone on Zoom. Okay, seeing no one, will close the public hearing. Anything further or
no, I'm ready. to move.
promotion?
Yes, I would move that we adopt ordinance 307, approve ordinance 307 and amended chapter 90, conditional uses of the first of the Story County Land Development Regulations of Story County Code of Ordinances to amend the provisions for adaptive reuse. First consideration and second consideration for Tuesday, October 25th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Hens.
Aye.
So aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, moving to additional items, we have discussion and consideration of draft resolution 23-34 for Story County on construction of hazardous liquid pipeline, electric transmission line, communication line, underground service line, and other similar installation on, over, across, or beneath drainage district infrastructure in the county.
Yeah, good morning, board.
Morning.
Thank you. Certainly Amelia and Andy are a tough act to follow. We don't have much of a presentation aside from sitting here before you. Again, we're part of that working group with the pipeline, and we want to bring up this resolution for how the drainage district improvements will be protected, construction of the pipeline. And so this was based upon the Iowa Drainage District Association model form for crossing permits. And then we also got crossing permits from Shelby County and O'Brien County. And we worked to incorporate those into the most restrictive form we could come up with as far as pipeline crossing permits. As you'll see, the legal authority is 468-186, and the governing body, that is the Drainage District trustees, have the authority to attach such additional conditions as is necessary to protect the physical integrity of the drainage infrastructure. So to that end, we came up with what looked good in those ISDA crossing permits. I don't know if there's any questions or any other comments Darren wants to offer. Again, I think this has to go before the trustees in your capacity as trustees as well. But this is, we took the input from the committee, the working group. We went over this several times and we had the different input there and what people want to see in here. And I think we've got it all captured pretty nicely. Darren and I did just talk in the hallway. There might be a little, I have to make the crossing permit fee of $1,000. The Shelby County one said up to $1,000. Ours says a one-time fee of $1,000. Darren's just concerned now that maybe that isn't quite enough. So maybe we consider changing that number to $2,000. But again, this is a draft, so.
My concern is mainly with how we're gonna locate the tile so there's requirements, they have to be 2 feet below the tile or 5 feet below an open ditch. We can locate the open ditch is easy, but the tiles sometimes are hard to find and I don't know what that's gonna take. So I want to make sure we have enough money. Have our district engineer locate those.
Do you have a tile finder? I know somebody who does.
Yeah. We might need to borrow.
You might need to borrow Sarah's.
The problem with these, we don't even start looking. So
Really.
we're out in the middle of a field with no intake. You got intake to get with the tile finder. Within 100 feet or could take digging.
So you think 2,000 rather than 1,000?
I think we just need to check with our district engineer to make sure that's what they think a maximum should be in their mind.
Because under 3A, we have a paragraph that says that all reasonable fees associated with compensation, wages, mileage, other legitimate expenses are supposed to be paid by the applicant. So we just want to make sure that we don't have a contradictory term in here where 3A says they pay all reasonable fee compensation. And then we have in our requirement section at the end, a one-time crossing fee of $1,000. And then them saying to us, well, we paid the $1,000, we're done. And no, we want them to make sure they're paying what it actually costs.
So why have that in there at all? If it's already stated earlier that they're gonna, that they are to cover all reasonable costs.
Maybe that's why, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe that's why Shelby County had up to 1,000. Maybe we should up to, or just,
Maybe just to include any costs of locating.
Do we have to put a maximum in?
I would guess Pipeline had an issue with an open book agreement that they signed saying they'd pay anything. They're probably a little uncomfortable with that. So that's probably why they went to an up to. I think we could do an up to, but I think we need to make sure that value is high enough to cover.
Okay. I did have a couple of questions. Do you have questions?
Well, I guess my one question then is if you're not sure on this, and this is a discussion and consideration, are you looking to bring something back to us then? Or are you looking at this time
Yes,
right now to have some sort of,
no, yes, absolutely. We brought this as a draft. We thought it'd be good to bring it on the same day that the other pipeline thing was brought. Just to kind of have it before your attention.
So you'll bring it back later for consideration. This is just discussion. Okay.
okay,
And I think Scott talked about doing it at a time where we would have the drainage district trustees meet, you meet in your capacity as trustees. Maybe, I don't know, when at 8:30 some morning, and then, so approve it as trustees and then also approve it as the board that morning. So, yeah, we'd be bringing this back. This
It
is
wouldn't
just
take,
draft.
we could just do 9:30 with the trustees and then 10 o'clock at the board meeting.
Right.
Yeah, because it won't take more than that, I don't think.
right.
Was the Drainage District Association's model resolution helpful?
Very helpful.
I'm glad to hear that.
So on page 2, under definition of board. Does that capture, like, if we were to down the road have a district that wanted to be their own trustees? It's this inclusive of that board of trustees also, because it's specific to board of supervisors as trustee.
I don't know if we've used the term board unless we're talking the board itself.
Mhm.
They had their own trustees. No, yeah, see where-
Or would we need to add district trustees as another definition?
Well,
Or
that point-
Maybe, is it always trustees? Could we just, instead of calling it the board, just say the trustees of individual drainage districts? Or is there someplace else where we're the board, acting as the board of supervisors in this? That's the question.
Mhm.
Oh,
I guess you
Board
don't
of
have to answer
Supervisors,
that,
the
right?
Board of Supervisors, of Story County sitting as the Board of Supervisors is the next one.
Right.
So if the trustees were just trustees of individual drainage districts, it could be us, or it could be the trustees that the drainage district elects.
Yeah, we'll strike that.
Did that
First,
make
board
sense, Scott?
supervisors.
Seems-
Yeah, I'm not aware of anywhere in the code on drainage districts. To the board as the board of trustees, it's all trustees. And the definition is board,
Mhm.
talks about the board in the drainage code, but it means the trustees definition. Drainage code. is trustees.
So you're saying that,
Probably have to have that language in there saying the supervisors acting as trustees. We just say the drainage district trustees.
that's
Uh-huh.
what I think would, it's a good, okay.
Okay.
Not specific to the supervisors.
supervisors.
it's Their own trustees.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, my concern was tying the hands
Mhm.
down the road.
Right.
If, yes. Good point.
Yeah, if somebody really wants to administer a drainage district, right?
I mean, you never know. You never know. And then on page 8E, there's reference to at the end of the project, construction, repairing damage by the applicant at the applicant's expense at the end of the project construction in the county in a manner acceptable to the drainage engineer. So does that mean as quickly as possible, or do we need to add in as quickly as possible since it's interrupting the flow? It on page 7, 3, sub C, sub 1, it makes reference to as quickly as possible for the same reason. And I should have sent you all of this yesterday. Sorry.
Yeah, because under C, that refers to an interruption in the normal flow of water being repaired as rapidly as possible. And then,
And then E makes it sound like just as long as by the end of the project it's repaired.
yeah, I guess it referred to Darren, so it refer, yeah, E says any damage to drain tiles under roads utilized by construction traffic and drain tile crossed by construction equipment that shall repair by the applicant at their expense in a manner acceptable to drainage engineer.
If it's specific to roads, we're permitting those under a different type of permit through our office, so we'll have something to go on there.
I can't hear you very well, Darren.
If it's specific to roads and the public roadways, we're permitting those through our office through utility permits. We'll have a different way to protect ourselves there.
Certainly, I don't see why we wouldn't add the same language as rapidly as possible. Once you know something's broken, we want you to fix it.
And then last sentence on page 8 into page 9. I think is just like a cut and paste kind of, that doesn't make sense.
The paved public roads.
Paved public roadways with adjacent tiles shall have the road and tiles bored under the each.
Oh.
So I think it was just a cut and paste thing, but I'm not sure what it was intending to say.
It shall be bored.
Shall be bored and just no under the each.
No open cut shall be permitted. Yep.
Okay. And then isn't the typical drainage district right of way 100 feet either side of center line? Or is it 150 either side of center line?
Usually more of 100, but we have to establish that usually in Story County since.
I thought it was 50, 50.
Yeah,
Never
100
mind.
feet total.
50.
Either
That
side.
was specific open ditches,
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
50 feet on either side of the center line of the open ditch. Unless we, like Darren said, if we've not defined that, then there's an assumed easement, but it doesn't have a defined width. And none of our drainage districts had an established easement
Okay,
until we just started establishing some on our open ditches.
okay, okay.
Eventually comes down to whatever we need to do the repairs of that.
Okay. I was just, my only concern with that was introducing confusion later where someone could say, yeah, but you say this here and you do this there. So,
We've never defined a on tile at all.
Okay.
In the projects we've done, it's only been the open ditch, not
okay, thank you. That was all. Those were all my questions.
Good catches.
Thanks. Any other questions? I want to say thank you for like the whole work groups, work and energy and time and back and forth on all of this. It's a really big deal. And there's a lot of concern about safety and doing it right. And so I just want to say
Well,
thank you.
We definitely got the right people on the working group. And I just want to add to that because I have been working with them regularly. That they just didn't say, oh, some other county's got this ordinance or we've got this, that'll be good enough. And basically have, looked at everything from the eyes of what is justifiable legally. And so we're not going to be taken to court by anybody. We're not going to, we have sound ordinances, sound resolution on the permitting and all of that. And I appreciate the good work that everybody's done on it. It's been a pleasure working with you on it.
Yeah.
And you're
And-
right. We have people who are concerned. The IUB makes the final decision, not us.
Mhm.
But it is our responsibility to do what we can to keep people safe and protect their drainage tiles and our ag lands. So I
Yeah,
think
I-
we're doing a good job.
I feel like this does this and it's without being obstructionist. And I
Mhm.
really appreciate that too.
Yeah.
That we're doing what we need to do and that you guys have worked so hard to make sure that we're making decisions for sound reasons and not running on emotion.
I also think too, just looking at the challenges with drainage districts themselves, we want to make sure we're doing what we can to protect.
Mhm.
I thank everybody who's been working on this.
Okay, so it's on our agenda for discussion and consideration, but it's just discussion. So we'll just wait for you to bring it, work with Scott and bring it back.
Yeah, thank you. We'll make the following edits. Thank you for those catches, and we'll make sure we have the appropriate crossing permit fee amount that would cover hopefully every eventuality that they won't balk at.
That's great.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, now we have discussion and consideration of revising paging system for HSC. Good morning, Barb. It is still morning.
Good morning, Board. So you have before you a quote to do some changes to the paging system at the HSC building in Ames. When we presented the emergency notification policy at Safety Days, there were a couple questions that came up. And one was that the microphone for the paging system at HSC was in the attorney's office, which was closed for an hour for lunch during the day. So I thought, well, I'll just reach out to the vendor and see what it would take to move that. I worked with Erin in general assistance and we found a nice place on her back counter to put the microphone. And then there was another question about, well, once we evacuate the building, how do we know when to come back in? So I said, well, how much extra would it be to add like a speaker on the outside of the building? So this quote includes moving the microphone to general assistance and then also placing a speaker on the McDonald's side of the building because that's where the evacuation would be for that building. Frankly, I'm a little surprised it's this low. I think it's something that we could accommodate easily. I do have money in my contract labor budget line item that I could cover this. Really, the only piece of hardware is the speaker. All the rest is just wiring and labor. So I thought it would be a good idea to bring it to the board and get your thoughts on what, if it's worth doing this, and it'll take about 2 days. And the vendor will do all the wiring. He'll put everything in, the speaker and everything, using their own equipment. So there's nothing we need to do really except supervise. Do you have any questions?
So putting it down at general assistance, they must have somebody there all the time.
Correct.
Okay.
And really, besides the county attorney's office, those are the only two departments we can count on, you know, to do the
Right.
paging if we need to.
Sure.
Are there speakers in any of our other buildings, exterior speakers?
No.
So
And-
how would we know here?
This is the start. I thought maybe this would be our trial run and just see how it works and if we like it or if we wanted to do something different or make any changes. We could do one here. I'm not sure at the Justice Center what we would do there. It was a different vendor. So we'd have to reach out to them and just see what it would take.
I'm just wondering if it's necessary at all.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
We could do the phone tree. That was something that we
Mhm.
brought up too. That would need a little more planning and definition.
Since
So-
we're doing this now anyway, why not just do the speaker there and see how it works? It doesn't, do you know what percentage of the cost the speaker is?
The speaker's $145.
Okay.
I don't have a breakdown on what the labor would be. Moving the microphone, I believe, would be most of the cost of the labor.
So right now, when they do like a emergency practice and they go outside, do they just make a determination when to come in, or is there?
They're supposed to, I don't know who the person is at the HSC building, but they're supposed to reach out to them to see when it's time to come back in. Whoever makes the page would be the one to pass the information to come back in. I know here at this building, we just go out in the yard and wave our hands, say, okay, you know, come back in. Yeah. So it's a little informal, just to maybe formalize the process a little better.
Yeah, because it's the difference between a drill and when it actually happens. You know, in a drill, you know, there's not a danger, so you just say, okay, the drill's done. But when it actually happens, it's like maybe there's a little more disaster planning in terms of who's in charge for the building and that person does that. Because actually, nobody's in the building, but the pager is in the building.
Correct.
So somebody has to go back in to do the page to say everybody got it and come back in.
Correct.
So I think it's important for us to know how much of this is them wiring the speaker and how much of this is moving the microphone, the paging microphone.
It isn't broken out.
I think moving the
You want
the
Barb to come back?
microphone is a good idea. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, most of the time there's somebody in the county attorney's office, even though they're locked. But sometimes there might not be. So I think it makes sense moving it to a department that's always
have-
open.
Right.
I would just be curious to know how much of that is
Mhm.
moving the microphone and how much, I just don't know that it's necessary. Speaker.
And now that I'm thinking about it, somebody has to go in, who's outside has to go back inside to page.
Correct, yes.
Is that really, I mean, I think what we're really talking about here is maybe we don't have the final steps in our emergency plan of who's in charge and makes the call and how do they make it that you can go back in the building safely. So it's a different issue.
Mhm.
Okay.
Would you be willing to get a breakdown from them?
Sure, I
and
can do
then
that.
come Back with it. Okay.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. Yeah, because I'd like to know a little bit more and I'm gonna, if there's an emergency out there, I'm gonna assume it's gonna be law enforcement or, fire department that would be able to tell you you've got an all clear, whether you can go back into a building or not.
And we did have some comments, okay, if we didn't do a speaker, how would we contact other than, a person running out and telling everybody it was okay, and I suggested maybe a phone tree. Then I got the pushback, well, I don't want to use my personal phone, so.
Yeah,
You're
mo-
not going to please everybody all the time, but yeah, I can certainly take this back and just ask them to separate the two.
That would,
And-
that would be
and-
good.
and
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
mean, I-
realization that nobody's going to be in the building if the building has been evacuated.
Correct. This would be most effective for drills.
Drills, we know they're a drill. So we
Right,
just say,
Right,
drill is done.
right.
Okay,
Any other questions?
No.
No.
Okay,
Thank you for bringing it forward.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other reports, we have discussion of motor grader lease renewal.
Okay, I brought this item to you a few weeks ago with some preliminary numbers from Caterpillar on our lease renewal. I did have some concerns at that time if Cat was gonna be able to actually lock in numbers this far out, or I don't know, 18 months out from actually doing this. But they were able to lock in a number on the new machines, and they came and looked at all of our existing equipment and gave us trade-in values for those. That's what's shown here in the quote sheet. This number is similar to what I showed you before from their initial quote. I would point out that 457 includes about $45,000 worth of snow equipment that we didn't get on the last lease. We used it for 2 leases. So that's an additional cost on this. So last time the motor graders were about 313,000, I believe, and now they're right about 415,000. So it's about a 5 to 6% increase per year, projecting that out through next year at 5 years. So it's not terrible compared to how a lot of things are going up in price right now, but so that is the cost for the 10 new machines. I am fairly surprised how high that is. That's good news for our trade-in on the, we're only trading in 8 because we're keeping 2 for our spares. So they're giving us almost 200,000 a piece for the 8. Again, we paid 313 for them. And that's kind of the whole concept behind this lease. This is kind of the sweet spot, the 5 years we get pretty much 2/3 back. And we'll get to use them for the 5 years under full warranty. So, and have no real expenses in that time frame. So that's a pretty good number for trade-in. And then our 2 older spares that we're trading in as well. One's a 2011. The reason that number is so high is because that is one I mentioned before that we had some very major repairs to right before the lease. Last time. We put, I think, 90,000 into that one. So it has a new engine and transmission. So, and Cat did the work, so they know that. So that's why we're getting so much for that old of a piece of equipment. And then the 2014, they're giving us 117 for that. The next slide. You can turn it. This is what I presented last time. I just updated some of the numbers down here, what we propose to do. Again, if we go with not really a lease, we just buy outright. These are the numbers that would be involved. Buying 10 at 457. We have 224 for the 2 trade-ins. And then we trade in 8 and 197 a piece. So it's 1.567 million. And then adding that all up, we end up with a total purchase price of just over 4 million. So at this point, I wanted to get you those numbers as soon as possible, if they're able to actually lock those in. The question will be how soon do we need to act on this and how soon is the board comfortable acting on it before our board session? We go through our budget. I believe we'll have that amount of carryover to use to actually purchase these outright this time. And that's probably what I will propose. And then I'm thinking the only addition to this would be if I would like to add, there's $11,000 per machine to go to a 5 to a 7 year warranty. So to add the extra 2 years is $11,000. I'd like to do that on 5 of the machines, half of the new ones. So the next time we can kind of split this up a little bit. We'll do like a 5 and a 7 year purchase. So we don't have to do it all in 1 year next time. But right now, in order to keep up with the program that was proposed 10 years ago.
So full warranties?
The 5 years full warranty, the extra 2 years is just on the transmission and
Okay,
drivetrain, but that's the major cost issues. So
okay, thank you.
And you wanted that on 5 of the machines.
just,
Right.
yeah, half of them. So that'd be an extra 55,000 on top of that. And then we would not have to use our typical 250,000 in lost per year to go to the motor grader purchase. We could use that on something else. That would be an additional savings if we did with the outright purchase like this. So for now, I just wanted to get you these numbers. I'll probably ask Kat to put it in more of a purchase order format, and I bring it back to the board in 2 or 3 weeks, and we can look at it again and decide after you're able to digest a little bit, if how soon you're comfortable acting on something like this.
Yeah, how long are they?
Yeah, sorry. How long are they willing to be? How long is your lock-in?
We haven't discussed that yet. When he puts together the purchase agreement, I'm sure that'll have terms put on it. for-
You're reasonably sure you can cover it.
What?
Yes,
I just asked if he was reasonably sure he could cover it. And that's what you've been saving up for, basically.
saving up for, I was projecting maybe 2.5 million, and then we had that bonding issue where didn't have to use the bond money, so that essentially kicked in another 1 million. And then our carry balance has enough there to cover the extra, so it's a unique time where we can actually cover it right now. And I think if we did that, it would get us out of the lease situation when we'd actually have the equity in the machine. So down the road, we could change how we do it if we want to. It'd give us more options. So if there's no more questions, I'll have Kat put it in more of a purchase order form and see what the timeframes they're able to give us on that. We can talk about it more.
Okay, we have Lisa Markley here. Lisa, do you have
Sure.
any concerns about what we're talking about?
No, I'm here for entertainment value.
Okay, just checking. We
No,
love
I-
seeing you.
In order to, not borrowing is the best option, obviously.
Uh-huh.
We are not maxed out at what we transfer to secondary roads from the general and the supplemental, or and the rural at this point in time. So there's some room there. We can also not transfer to secondary roads, but pay directly out of the general fund if you're interested in doing any of that.
Okay.
So if we're working through the budget and we find that, this is gonna take too much out of the fund balance and not leave Darren with enough money to operate,
Mhm.
there are some other avenues we can go down that don't include long-term borrowing.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
And I don't, like I said, I don't see this affecting our operational budget like it is now, but if we wanted to, bump up some bridge replacement or something like that, at that point, we could look at some other sources of funding to do something like that, or we could borrow at that time. But,
We can bond for bridge replacement.
yeah, do something like that.
Yeah. That would make more sense.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any upcoming agenda items?
Not right now. I don't think I have any right now.
Now it's time for public comment number 2, comments from the public on items not on today's agenda. Board may not take any action on comments due to requirements of open meetings law, may do so in the future. Anyone wishing to make public comment, you can step forward to the table or raise your hand on Zoom. Seeing no one raise their hand on Zoom or step forward, we'll close public comment number 2 and move to liaison assignments, committee meeting updates and announcements from the supervisors. Supervisor, you want to start?
Sure. I have a personal appointment tomorrow morning. Thursday is really kind of my busy day. I start at 7:30 with Central Iowa Workforce Development Meeting, and then I have Aging Resources, and then we have ARPA check presentations Thursday afternoon. Friday, looks like I have a webinar that I will be on the Are You Looking for Normal? Rethinking, is it or IT presentation on Friday. What's going on for me. So it's a little bit lighter, except for Thursday will be a long day.
Supervisor Merkin?
A lot going on. Wednesday, United Way is having a presentation on the ISU student wellness data, which I'm going to attend. Then I'll be recording local talk with KHOI, having a meeting on broadband grant possibilities in the afternoon. In the evening, Emergency Management Commission meets. Thursday morning, a meeting at Verbio. We have ARPA check presentations. A hunger collaboration is meeting, but I don't know if I'm going to get there because I also have an Iowa Creek WMA meeting Thursday late afternoon. Friday, Ames Foundation is having their annual event. I'm hoping I can attend, but I'm not positive. And then Monday's the middle school career fair at the library, which I'd like to drop by at. So a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Today I'm attending the NACO Central Region meeting. And then I have Story County Housing Trust and then SCAN meeting. And then this evening I have SIRHA with another SIRHA subcommittee meeting afterwards. Long day. Wednesday, so tomorrow, flu and COVID boosters at HSC in Ames. So anyone who didn't get their boosters last week, there's a chance for tomorrow. And I have a wellness committee meeting. I have CCJ tomorrow evening. I have hunger collaboration on my calendar. I'm going to try to attend that
Good.
unless,
Good. I should go to WMA.
yeah, you should.
Yes, I need to be there. Okay, thank you. I'll take
yeah.
that off my list.
And then also Thursday morning, there's an IRDC Zoominar. Is that the same one you were just talking about? Yesterday,
Which one?
today, and tomorrow? Is that what you said? Anyway, there's a webinar. Go into that. Friday morning, I have a green team meeting. And then next week, I will, I've got SIRHA interviews Monday, kind of all over the place, and then the career fair. But Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I will be out of the office for my stepdaughter's wedding in Wisconsin. So just a heads up on that.
Hey,
Yay.
Right. Yeah, my next week is the busy week, so.
Is what?
Next week is my busy week. A little bit lighter, a couple days this week.
All right. Anything else?
I move we adjourn.
second.
Moved and seconded. Hens,
Aye.
Merkin,
Aye.
Basil, aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.